Something was terribly wrong with our grandparents 20 years ago. Welcome to Horror in the Mirror, a channel which is intended to help you better understand the stories. We try to provide interesting stories about terrifying events and situations. Don't forget to subscribe, because we upload daily. Stay for more fun and excitement. And now, my dears, let us continue for you our fun and frightening story. She didn't move, didn't blink, just laughed that terrible, endless laugh. We were paralyzed with fear, unable to move or make a sound. As dawn broke, Grandma suddenly stopped laughing. But she did something that shocked us even more. She straightened up and walked to the kitchen as if nothing had happened. A few minutes later, we heard her calling us down for breakfast. "Kids, come on down. Pancakes are ready." Emily and I stumbled out of the cupboard, our legs numb from crouching all night. We glanced at each other, fear etched into our faces. How could she act so normal after what we had just witnessed? The day after our chilling encounter with Grandma's laughter, Emily and I were on edge. The events of the previous night played over and over in our minds. Determined to find answers, we decided to search their room while they were in the garden. We scoured every inch until Emily found something strange, a slight draft coming from behind the cupboard. We pushed it aside, revealing a hidden door. Our hearts raced as we opened it and saw a dark staircase leading down to an underground room. That night, the house was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of hurried footsteps and rustling were absent. It was as if the house was holding its breath. Emily and I crept out of our room, drawn to the unsettling silence. We tiptoed to our grandparents' room, finding the cupboard moved to the side and the secret door ajar. We descended the narrow staircase, our steps slow and deliberate. The air grew colder with each step, and a faint, acrid smell filled our nostrils. At the bottom, we found ourselves in a dimly lit room, candles flickering on the walls, casting eerie shadows. In the center of the room, our grandparents were performing a grotesque ritual. They were making cuts on each other's arms with rusty knives, then licking the blood off each other's wounds. The sight was horrifying. We stood frozen in the doorway, unable to comprehend what we were seeing. Suddenly, our grandparents stopped and turned their heads towards us, their eyes locking onto ours. The shock and confusion on their faces quickly shifted to an unsettling calmness. I quickly closed the door and locked it with a rusty key hanging on the wall. "Kids," Grandpa said in a voice that sent chills down my spine, "it's just us, your grandparents. You should be asleep, run." I whispered to Emily, and we sprinted up the stairs and through the house. We could hear rapid footsteps behind us, but we didn't dare look back. We burst out of the front door and kept running until we reached the edge of the property. When we finally turned around, we saw our grandparents standing in the doorway, waving their hands in a grotesque parody of a cheerful goodbye. We didn't stop running until we reached the nearest bus stop. Emily was in tears, and I did my best to comfort her. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, even though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. When the bus finally arrived, I let her fall asleep in my arms while I stayed awake, watching the road, my mind racing with unanswered questions. 20 years have passed since that terrifying summer. Emily, who was only 10 at the time, has struggled with trauma ever since. She refuses to speak about it and avoids any contact with our grandparents. As for me, I meet them occasionally, but only in broad daylight and never at their house. The fear and confusion from that night still linger, and I often wonder what dark secrets our grandparents were hiding. Sometimes, I lie awake at night, replaying the events in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. But no matter how much time passes, one thing remains clear: that summer changed everything. The memory of that sinister ritual will forever haunt our dreams.